That's a problem. That's a problem. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll be out there.
What's up, disgeneраtes? It's the disc golf world. I'm Jefferson, and as always, alongside me, the one with all the holes in his game, Swiss Cheese. This is the first week in a while we've had a break from the tour. Sorry, but are we really going to count this Europe event as an elite series? Feels weird to call that event more prestigious than LVC that had way more touring pros playing in it, but we'll get into that later. Before that, we gotta talk about what Brodie Smith has been saying over on Tour Life. Yeah, slow week. Actually, it was because we were told Calvin Heiberg was an absolute savage when speaking on various disc golf topics, and I can confirm, in fact, that was true. Even if his main in Mario Kart is dry bones. It only took an hour and a half of blurry video, audio cutting in and out, and way too much sports car talk. But at the hour mark, finally something that made it worth watching, even if it wasn't 2x speed.
I text Jeff Spring and I text Phil, two employees of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and I said, hey, there's quite a big gap right now. And I took a screenshot to show, like, that group's on hole 9. They're playing hole 9. This group is just starting to play hole 7. If I don't do this, Calvin has to play a 5.5-hour round, because if the backups get really bad, they only get worse. They don't magically disappear throughout the round, right? They just stack up on top of each other. They pull up to me and I'm throwing shots and they're like, hey, did you put a complaint in about slow play? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what group was that? And I was like, you can see it. You can see what group it is. I'm like, click the through button. It organizes it by hole. And I'm like, okay, see this group? They're on hole 8. See the next group? They're on hole 13. That's a problem.
It certainly seems like a problem if Brodie is having to contact DGPT officials to fix problems at the event they are currently running. Now, we are only hearing one side of the story here, but from what Brodie told, I gotta agree with him. It totally could have been the case they were already aware of the problem, but the way it was described was not at all that way. Brodie made it seem like they were more confused about what to do than me at a Chinese buffet. And I don't think this is Brodie complaining for no reason, as some people suggested.
Cody said, just paid $2 to say Brodie is a drama queen, and I've enjoyed Brodie for some time, but golly.
Although I can't say that about all the topics they talk about. Personally, I believe the Jedi spotter was fine, and I don't care about Star Wars one bit. Sorry, Casey. But with the context of it being May 4th, I think it's one of those things we can look at and have a smile. It's not like the dude was cosplaying as Chewbacca the next day. The dude was pretty cordial with lightsabers too. No twirling, no pretend fighting, nothing of that sort. Just indicating in and out of bounds, like a spotter should. I really hate the argument of, some people might think this looks bad. What if non-disc golfers saw this and made fun of us? They literally already do that. Remember the last time we were on SportsCenter? And then you have the audacity to say, what if the Jedi was in the ace clip that made the top 10? Chris Clemens hit an ace day 1, and guess what? No ESPN. I bet if there was a freaking Jedi using some General Grievous action, it would have gone viral. Also, why do we care what other people think? If we as disc golfers can agree it doesn't affect anything, then we're probably fine. I think Brodie saying some people might think this looks bad holds the same weight as me saying some people might think this looks great. Literally last week at my local league, I had 3 separate people tell me they didn't follow pro disc golf, yet saw the Jedi and asked me about it. Right there, showing how a common connection might bring more people in. Although, I'm not going to use anecdotal data to push my point. But this shows just because we're a professional sport doesn't mean we can't accept something because the perception might be nerdy. Because this tweet doesn't justify the whole microaggressions against people that like Star Wars. At least I have the balls to call them nerds. But so am I. Just like, I don't know, 80% of us that play this silly little game. Yes, I do believe most disc golfers didn't play other sports, so finding spots like this to attract similar people might not be the craziest of ideas. But no, I don't need furries coming to help spot the OTB Open. I understand the distinction between regular disc golf and being a professional sport, but there's plenty of examples of sports trying to relate more to the fans, even if you want to keep using some weird analogies. Look at the Savannah Bananas, a whole organization that's finding success and going viral for being different. Yeah, it's baseball, but they embrace the fun, which makes fans more and more interested. It might look goofy, but they have way more subscribers and get hella more views, so maybe we shouldn't be concerned about the optics as much as we do. I mean, we do throw frisbees. Also, I gotta defend Bobby here for a second, after Brodie decides to attack my boy for just doing his job. And when the argument is he almost got hit by a disc, I'm sorry, but that just sounds like complaining to complain. Bobby is one of the best cameramen in the game, so for you to jump to conclusions farther than you down the leaderboard is crazy to me. How can you seriously be mad at something that almost happened? There's a key word in there. The disc literally didn't hit him, and we're talking about a victory that Calvin already had locked up. Also, to assume Bobby was unaware of his surroundings, the dude gets paid to film disc golf every week. He knows what he's doing. I know it sounds like now I'm just complaining, but somebody has to defend Bobby since he doesn't have a platform to do it himself. And he's my dog, so I refuse to let his good work be slandered. Especially since nobody knows how hard this job actually is, and that goes for every camera operator out there on the course. I also can't remember the last time someone said these freelance workers living in vans, trying their best every day, are doing a good job. So keep it up, guys. You're killing it. The last thing I wanted to touch on from the podcast was the handshake conversation. And I actually agree with you on this one. I come from a wrestling background, and man, I always felt there was way too much shaking of the hands. Before the match, after, then high school you do it before the duel, and at the end? Why? Disc golf, you only do it on 18. But again, why? I guess out of respect or tradition? I don't know. Always felt weird to me. Alright, enough nonsense. Swiss, hit the people with the Wintergreen Copenhagen Open recap.
Beth at 69.
I just told myself, you got to will this one in there. Whatever you have, just will it in there.
This man is unbelievable. This is what athletes live for. This is the moment.
This weekend saw the inaugural DGPT Europe event with its first Elite Series tournament, the Copenhagen Open. The event was held at the most played disc golf course in the world. That's too Danish for me to pronunciate correctly. But here it goes. Valby Parken Disc Golf Park. Yes, the player field was smaller than LVC with less big names in the competition. Yet the event and the start of the DGPT Europe couldn't have asked for a better opening to the new tour. The event featured great weather, a large player field, exceptional action, solid fan turnout, and a healthy prize pool. And sure, their production is still in its infancy, but so is the sport over there. For those COVID throwers new to the game, the tournament and the production feel similar to early coverage from VHS past, yet with modern arms. The coverage, camera work, commentary, and at times excessive amount of male capri pants or long shorts. I don't know what you guys are calling them over there. But what I do know, guys, is save that look for those who live below the Alps and the Russians. All of what some might be considered issues with an unpolished product during its inaugural event are just new growing pains, and trust will improve over time. Well, maybe not those capris or culottes, but you guys get what I mean. And at the very least, still got my ass up early enough to watch the action. All that aside, the Copenhagen Open saw a wild championship Sunday come back from 9 strokes down to push a playoff in the FPO, Yuli showing out early, not one but 2 teenage emerging performances, and a breakout win from one of the 2 dudes who sling meat for a living at Mr. Meaty. The FPO action was all Kadi Asalu early. You might remember the Estonian thrower from her top 10 performance at last year's European Open, but has been atop the podium at multiple European stops last year, defending champion of this event, and some other top 10 performances in her career at Elite Series events in the US. Oh, and the fact that she could pass for any diehard villain's girlfriend. Came out of the gate with an 8 under, 992 rated round, and a 3-stroke lead ahead of Silva Saarinen. Asalu was controlled off the tee but did most of her damage on the putting green. Would follow that up with a 7 under round where she would go on to score more birdies on the day than Evelina, who only started 5 under on the first 4 holes on her way to a course record-setting performance 10 under round. Evelina, like always, dominated off the tee for the entire weekend. Asalu, however, would birdie 9 of the final 12 holes after back-to-back holes where a C1X missed putt would result in a bogey or worse. The performance would give Asalu a 4-stroke lead over Salonen, who owns one too many Mumi mugs heading into the final round, and even more of a lead on Silva, who was too far away to press the action for a win, but was able to hold off a charging Heidi Laney, who scored the hot round on the final day. But for Silva, it would be her first podium finish on the season. The final day couldn't have started off better for Asalu and more of a disaster for Evelina. Kadi would go on to hit her first C2 putt on the day for a huge birdie on hole 1. That was right after Evelina's 2 OB throws on the hole. The second, simply put, was horrendously bad and resulted in a triple bogey on the hole and what was a 4-stroke swing before they reached the tee box of hole 2. With half a cup of coffee in front of me and the sun yet to even begin to rise, it was at this point that I knew I f***ed up. Little did I know, this story had more up and downs and twists remaining. Credit Evelina, who pulled it all together enough to not allow a complete tailspin of a round. But after another bogey on 5, would be 9 strokes back with 13 holes left to play. I'm not sure what was going on in Evelina's head, but she could not have expected Cotty to not score another birdie to hole 18, or bogey 3 holes on 7, 8, and 11. That would result in a 6 total stroke swing. Evelina, right after birdieing one of the most difficult holes on the course, only to 3-putt right after on 12, where she would miss 2 putts within 15 feet of the basket, instantly sending fans to that dark place where they go after watching Evelina putt. Well, guys, I guess that was fun while it lasted, right? Wrong. She got that stroke back with a birdie on 13, followed with another on 16, now down only 1 stroke with 2 to play. Despite Cotty not playing to win, Evelina couldn't make her pay after a layup on 17, but did hit her comebacker and headed to 18, the first par 6 on the DGPT Tour ever. Evelina down a stroke, needing an eagle, something that had yet to happen that entire weekend after Asalu had the best drive of the entire card. Evelina absolutely ripped her second shot with a full flex, only to have it followed up with another near full pull with OB surrounding the pin. The shot checked up in time to land and bounce for an obstructed C2 putt for the 36-foot eagle look that she would need to push the action to a playoff. But we're still talking about Evelina here, the queen of C2 layups, with less than halfway bids to get her close enough to make a less nervy putt after. Stepped to that putt with the confidence of McBeast and delivered the most committed putt on an elevated basket or any basket I had ever seen her take in her career, followed by even more emotion than her major celebration a few weeks prior. Pushing the action to the playoff for the first DGPT Europe Elite Series event. Both would go on to bogey the first hole of the playoff, the island hole of 7, heading the action to 15, where only Asalu had registered a birdie over the entire weekend. Staring down the pin, Evelina throwing first has her best drive of the weekend on that hole, putting herself 36 feet away yet again for a birdie. Cotty, with a beautiful flex shot, put herself within the circle for a birdie look herself. As the two walked to their disc, most, including me, believed Asalu would take down the event right there, only to watch Evelina bury that putt with the same conviction, if not more, as the last putt on 18, leaving everyone watching completely shook, including Asalu, who missed her birdie putt look, giving the win to Evelina. The butt of far too many jokes and memes just delivered on both of those C2 putts with that pressure just might be the catalyst for Evelina to take yet another step. Scary to think, as she is now up there with the best in the game in Kristen Tatar. After this win, she has just as many wins on the season as Tatar, with one of those being a major, while having just as many podiums also. Over in the MPO action, not to be outdone by all the FPO drama, saw none other than Paul Ulibarri with a share of the lead after the opening day action. Uli looked strong early and found himself tied with Jakub Semerad and Daniel Davidson after a 10-under round. Yet, the buzz was celebrating the late heroics and finish of Nikola Santala, whose drives has about as much elbow as Nikola Jokic. But after a slow start, would birdie 9 of the last 10 holes and 8 straight to finish the round. And despite both he and Uli shooting a great 10-under rounds on day 2, both remaining in contention and on lead card, was completely overshadowed by Jesse Niemanen's course record-setting performance and a 16-year-old unsponsored Finn and evidently huge Yankee fan, Eetu Timonen. Jesse scored a 13-under, 1071 rated round, and most importantly, a clean bogey-free one. Funny enough, it should have been even better, as he airmailed a short birdie putt on 14. Apart from that putt, was as sharp as we have seen Jesse on the season. And yes, he has struggled at times on the year, even alluding to the change of the course and scenery helping his game in a post-interview. Led in both C1 and C2 in regulation and tee to green on the day, and despite having that one C1X miss, added 3 C2 putts on the round, 2 of which came late on holes 16 and 17. The performance would put him atop the leaderboard with a single-stroke lead over Uli heading into the final. Timonen is a player, in all honesty, Innova should be looking to lock up. The teenager, who isn't attached to any major manufacturer, is currently only sponsored by an online Finnish Innova disc provider, called none other than Arctic Animal. Not a bad idea to sign a young Finnish talent who is already throwing your plastic, similar to what Innova has done with Evelina and Henna, but this time on the MPO side. And as much as it might be the first time many fans in the States has heard of the young Finn, he has performed well in the past and has made a name for himself in Europe, was coming off a top 10 finish at last week's silver event in the Belgium Open. Not to mention a top 5 at Prodigy Disc Tour's event 2 years ago at the age of 14. A packed event featuring the best in Europe, and at that time, an Antala win. Sure, he could eat some more salty licorice, but he did put together an 11 under round, tied for the second best on day 2. Would go on to score 8 straight birdies at one point. That was capped off with a back-to-back birdie putts from outside 40 feet. The effort would move him up 11 spots on the lead card, tied with Antala for third at 18 under for the round. Yes, he started out the final round strong with 2 quick birdies and extended his lead by 1 stroke, only to lose that lead and be tied with Yuli 3 holes later. After a bogey on 4, only to follow that up with a missed C1X putt on the next hole, resulting in a par after a Yuli birdie. Niemanen would close out his front 9 with 2 more birdies, including a huge 42-foot birdie putt on hole 9 that kicked off a 6 straight birdie run that put the victory in his grasp. Yuli would tank on the final day about as bad as one of those new Zuka commercials that he's featured in. The best C1X putter in the game would have 4 misses in the middle of the round, one resulting in a costly bogey, but not only knocked him from competing for the win, but also off the podium altogether, finishing tied for 4th place. Both A2 and Nicholas tried to make things interesting. Each scored 10 under rounds. A2, after starting with a bogey on hole 1, would not miss a putt from either circle on the day, including a 60-footer. Listen, I just don't trust that metric conversion, but that par-saving putt on 5 from distance is what landed him on his first podium. That putt would start a run where he would go 10 under on the last remaining 13 holes, but truly never pressured Niemanen. Nicholas, who was closer to tour companion Yessi for much of the day, but a bogey on 16 after an errant drive off the tee would give the victory to Yessi, who never faltered after his early struggles. The win was the largest cash winning of his career and first win since Turku Open last year. Antala would need a birdie on 18 to tie the 16-year-old A2 for a share of second place. The finish would be the best of young A2's career, as his season starts in a very strong fashion. He's already earned more in 2 events this season than he has in his entire career, and hopefully at least a visit to the States now for USDGC. The entire podium was filled with Finnish talents, and Finland would be home to 6 of the top 10, truly showing their game separates amongst the rest of Europe. The only other nation with more than 1 player in the top 10 was Estonia, one of which was Roland Kor, another 16-year-old who put together a 10 under round from chase card and finished a stroke behind A2 of the same age. Not a bad finish for his first Elite Series event ever. Would improve on his score after each day. And at the very least, Roland and A2 shows us the game in Europe is much like the game here in the States, with ever so younger talent looking to progress the sport further.
The Copenhagen Open wasn't the only pro disc golf we had. Unfortunately, it's part of the post-produced variety. I'm not gonna lie, I can't remember the last time I watched Jomez, and this was on Gatekeeper. Also, we post videos at 4 p.m., so I can't technically even watch the final round before making this recap. So I'm gonna make it short and sweet. That way, you people have to actually go and watch the rest. Round 1 started like any typical pro tour event. What? LVC isn't on tour anymore? Well, that's dumb. Either way, Gannon Buhr found himself on top of the leaderboard with a 2-stroke lead over Calvin Heimberg, Isaac Robinson, and Nick Newton. Yeah, that guy that's always zipping around on his scooter. Round 2, Gannon put together another 12 down and hot round for the day, extending his lead to 7 strokes, this time over fellow Cracker Barrel enthusiast Connor Rock. Oh yeah, and tied at 17, you also had fan of the show Casey White and new podcast host Emerson Keith. Buhr, like most people's third night in Vegas, was starting to slip, only putting together a 5 under, allowing Calvin to push up 5 spots into second with a 12 down. The final round, most would assume a battle between these two, but no, Connor Rock stole the show with a hot 14 under on the final day to take away the win from both of them. If you guys don't know who Connor is, that's because it's his first full year on tour, rocking the bunk bed van setup with his touring buddy. We shared plenty of parking lots at Cracker Barrels, so we know the struggles. If only they didn't keep taking the good spots. But it is good to see a win for the good guys. Over on the FPO side, it was a battle between Sophia and Lucky. Yeah, I'm not good with last names. Flip-flopping between first and second every round, but Sophia would have the lead going into the final day. It wouldn't take long for Lucky to take the lead, however. Hole 2, if we want to be specific. And she didn't give it up from there, ending her final round with a 7 under and 2-stroke lead for the victory. But those weren't the only tournaments that happened this weekend. Nope, it's daylight time, baby. And this is going to be an easy recap too. Ezra Robinson with a wire-to-wire victory, and Owen Scoggins, who won by 16 strokes. I hate that we've abandoned this gem of a course, but I refuse to let it go in silence. Too bad I have no stats to talk about from the last 2 events, so we're going to keep it nice and simple. And that's everything disc golf you need to know from over the weekend. I know we didn't have a DGPT event, so there wasn't a whole lot to cover, but this weekend we have the OTB Open, where Swiss and I are going to be going live on the final day for a companion stream. So make sure to follow the Disc Golf World to not miss out on that. And if you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe. It's the easiest way to support the channel as we continue to grow, even if we aren't living in the minivan anymore. Shout out to everyone who's supporting over on Patreon and our members. We appreciate each and every one of you for helping support doing what we love. If it weren't for you guys, I don't know what we'd be doing. So we really do appreciate it.